Hamilton from If Hamilton and Jefferson Were Friends speaking. Today we're going to be talking about the events that led up to the American Revolution, including from all the way from 1600 with Jamestown, Puritans, Pilgrims, John Rolfe and John Smith, all the way until the Boston Massacre. Okay, so first John Smith looks around Jamestown and says, Jefferson?
Started with Jamestown, mate.
Jamestown, mate?
Started with Jamestown. So you get the background.
Sorry, technical difficulties. Jamestown was the first permanent English settlement. It was, where was Jamestown again? Virginia. So, back then, it was really important back then. They had the House of Burgesses in Williamsburg, which is the first elected governmental body in America. It was partial authority to pass laws for Virginia. The time between governors would be so long, so House of Burgesses would gain more power. And in 1619, first Africans were brought to Jamestown, beginning of British-American slavery. So they see men are desperate for women. They wanted power and protection to come. Dutch ship captures them. So would you like to start about with John Smith?
Absolutely, mate. So, looking at John Smith, he looks around Jamestown and he says, those who don't work, don't eat. Simple as that. Those who don't work, don't eat. He then establishes the martial law to establish this idea that people who don't work, don't eat. No chicken tonight.
That basically means that women basically can't eat because they don't work. Pretty weird. John Rolfe noticed that, and there's another guy named John Rolfe, not to be confused with John Smith. He noticed that tobacco.
John number 2.
He noticed that tobacco tastes so bad in Jamestown. Drats. So he fuses together 2 strings of tobacco, the Caribbean one, which is good, and the home one, which is bad. And over time, he was wealthy and imported servants who ended up rebelling, and ends up going to slaves. John Rolfe made tobacco a cash crop. He also had a joint stock company, which is a business venture where investors pool capital to finance risky ventures. Next, we're going to be talking about Sarah Harrison, who weirdly refused to vow and obey her husband 3 times during the wedding ceremony. Jefferson, would you like to act it out with me? Obey.
Absolutely.
Obey. Okay, how about you be the other person? Say obey.
Obey or die.
No obey.
Obey.
No obey.
Obey again.
No obey. And then eventually...
Obey.
And eventually after 3 times, he just gives up.
I'm done with this. I give up.
Because he was so desperate for women. They really wanted women. But they wanted more women. So how would you get women to come to Jamestown? Well, you would offer them a bunch of substantial incentives like free transportation to the colonies, land, a dowry of clothing, and more. Also, in Jamestown, it allowed colonial women to exert control over their own lives against.
Unlike in Britain.
Continue, Michael.
Since women came, more men settled down and did not leave, because then they made families, and families are unbreakable. And this is all part of the plan to get people to stay in Jamestown. This is all part of the plan. They thought it through.
So now we come to the Pilgrims, who are the original English colonists who ended up in New England. They established the Mayflower Compact, which was the first written agreement of self-government America. In America, they believe that English, a religious point of view, is bad, and that is beyond repair. They go to the Netherlands and to escape England, but they leave the Netherlands because it's way too free. There's like robbery, everything. It's crazy. Then the Pilgrims made a deal with John Smith, remember him from earlier, to go to Virginia, except they are blown slightly off course and land up farther north in Plymouth in 1620. Fun fact, Plymouth Rock is a rock. It's not a place, it's a literal rock. I bet it's this big, pretty big. It's a rock. Puritans, another people, not to be confused with Pilgrims later, came 10 years after and arrived in Massachusetts Bay, and they tried to make a religious utopia, also known as the City on the Hill, saying that Puritans wanted everyone to admire them and the amazing city that they had built. Therefore, City on the Hill. Hill, everyone's looking up at the amazing city. They were challenged by Michael. Continue. Oh, Jefferson.
That symbolism was there. Typo. They were challenged by Anne Hutchinson because he said that no one does not need salvation from the church. So, because she had a different belief, of course, utopia, they say no, I'm trying to speak Spanish. No fuego, you cannot come here. And they drive her out of Massachusetts, and she settles in New York, but she ends up getting killed.
Actually, I'm fluent in many languages, including Spanish. Anne Hutchinson, porque ella no dice que alguien no necesita salvación por la iglesia. That means Anne Hutchinson, because she said that no one does not need salvation from the church. The church drives Anne out of Massachusetts and she settles in New York State. Another person, Roger Williams, was banished because he stood up for Native Americans and arguing that their land should not be stolen. He also gets banished, but before they send him to England, he fled and he started his own settlement in Providence on
Rhode Island.
Narragansett Bay on June 1636 on a gift of land from the Narragansett Indians. A little more on Jamestown, because that's obviously more important. Well, it was significant for establishing the first permanent English settlement in the world. And the original colonists went there to find gold, like the Spanish had done in South America, not to stop families. Okay.
I'm rich.
Now we're gonna fast forward a while. Okay, so now we're gonna start with what caused the American Revolution. Okay, the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation were two critical documents in the fight of American independence in 1776. These two and Old Beneath, which we're gonna state later. Also, common sense was really important. Common sense, Michael, would you like to continue? Oh, Jefferson, Michael, I'm not sure who you are anymore. Wait, isn't Michael like your Superman name? Who's Superman?
I'm his twin.
Oh.
We get mixed up sometimes. I'm his twin.
Oh, yeah, no bad.
So, Common Sense, written by Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine, he arrived in England in 1774, quickly became part of a movement to separate the colonies from Britain. So in January 1776, Paine, which is same year as the Declaration of Independence, just a little later on, Paine is publishing what is actually the 47 pages of Common Sense. Sales take off just like how Shopify can boost your sales by selling 100,000 copies the first couple months and around 500 copies in the couple of months following that. Paine is a controversial figure in his own time and to this day. He ends up in France but is nearly executed but ends up surviving. Hooray.
That brings us to our sponsor of this video, tennis balls. Look how fun they are. You can throw them off the wall and catch them. You can get to play tennis. It's so much fun. You should really buy one. Continue with Thomas Paine. Or where are we? Where were we? Oh yes, Thomas Paine, Sarah Hutchinson, Jamestown, and Sales. Jefferson, did you mention that he ends up in France and he gets nearly executed?
Absolutely, this guy hasn't been paying attention to my speech. I said that already, mate.
Moment. Okay. Thankfully, now we're gonna go back to the revolution. But we had France, and they became the most important foreign ally of the United States during the American Revolution. Next, we're gonna come to the Quartering Act. The Quartering Act stated that Britain would force Americans to house its soldiers in their homes, and their soldiers could punish their maids, or the colonists, if they did not perfectly serve them. Loyalists were. This was such as an opportunity to enforce colonists so that they would start obeying laws. But the Patriots resented this because they had to house and feed soldiers, and feed troops were intended to control their freedom. Would you like to continue with the Stamp Act?
Absolutely, but to add on to Hamilton's amazing speech, this is where the Third Amendment came in on the Bill of Rights, which we'll talk about later, comes up. Third Amendment says no quartering soldiers, since they hated the Quartering Act.
James Madison, oh, I hate him. And wait, in an alternate universe, didn't you guys used to be really good friends?
My flip phone doesn't. My Samsung Z Flip 5 does not seem to be working right now, so I have no clue what you just said. But
okay, well, in an alternate universe, you and James Madison used to be besties. You guys used to agree on anything.
Absolutely, mate.
In fact, he was also a part of the Marbury vs. Madison case, which we will talk about later. Okay, continue with the Stamp Act.
The Stamp Act, it taxed newspapers, pamphlets, almanacs, legal documents, playing cards, dice, and dice. The slogan, no taxation without the representation, became popular because the colonists felt unfairly taxed by the British government without having any say in it.
Following the French and Indian War, my turn, Britain taxed various goods such as tea, paper, and glass. This was all done under King George and the Parliament's rule. Loyalists criticized such British actions like the Stamp Act as they wanted to pursue peaceful protests and believed violence would give rise to mob rule or tyranny. The Patriot reacted extremely strong and resorted to mob violence. Ironic. And make the Stamp Act collective resign. Riots broke out over many cities throughout the colonies. Declaratory Act. Jefferson?
Okay. My turn. The Declaratory Act said that the Stamp Act would be repealed. Hooray! But the English Parliament would have absolute control over the laws of the colonies. Like the Loyalist response. Happy because now they didn't have to pay fines and now the English gained more control over the colonies. But Patriots, indifferent because on one hand, the Stamp Act was removed, but now they've lost some control over themselves. They have no control over their laws. It's controlled by someone over the Atlantic Ocean.
Now we're coming to the Townshend Acts, which put a tax on goods including paper, glass, paint, lead, and tea. Loyalists were indifferent because it was basically a second coming of the Stamp Act. And the Patriots were mad for the exact same reason. This was basically the second coming of the Stamp Act. Now, Boston Massacre. Some of my favorites. I actually made a song on this. Like, I'm a musician, if you didn't know. Pretty good. I can rap, I can sing. I'm like the best that's ever lived. I'm better than Jefferson over there. But that's besides the point. The Boston Massacre fired up the revolution, okay. The colonists were terrorizing British soldiers.
I'm digressing, Hamilton.
Who has a musical written after them, huh? That's what I thought.
Who was actually the president? Who was actually the president?
Who was Washington's second in command?
Who was actually a first in command?
Okay, you got me.
Well, that's beyond the point. Get back to what it is.
Get back to work. Colonists were terrorizing British soldiers, then someone yelled fire. After the dust settled, 5 people died. A trial ensued where John Adams successfully defended the British soldiers, and 8 out of 10 of them got out scot-free. The Loyalists were furious at how Paul Revere's propaganda spread. He spread propaganda all over the colonies, which basically, if you're mentally challenged, propaganda means political story. So it's basically something to try to sway the views. This propaganda basically showed the British as having an armed battalion on firing, on purpose, on all of them. But it was just purely a mistake. But the propaganda worked, and it shifted many views of colonists all over America to pro-patriot, and the Loyalists were furious. But the Patriots were ecstatic to find out how propaganda worked, and how the disasters turned into a symbol for British tyranny. But both of us know, because we were good friends with Paul Revere, that he really did not care about these innocent lives. He just cared about the opportunity for propaganda. Next, we come to the Boston Tea Party and the Tea Act. Would you like to continue, Michael's twin?
I know, you always get mixed up with me, mate. You've met my twin way too much.
Michael Jefferson. Good person.
So, we have the Boston Tea Party to start off. It is an American political protest targeting the Tea Act, which was enacted May 10th, 1773, which allowed the British East India Company to sell tea to China and American colonies without paying the Townshend Tax. The protesters threw chests of British tea into the harbor. The British did this extremely seriously. They considered it treason. This event was one that seriously scattered the American Revolution. The Loyalists found this outrageous, that even though they had separate opinions, their fellow colonists would waste so much money and dump the tea into the ocean. The Patriots, though, thought that the king finally got what he deserved, and that they finally made themselves noticed to the king, and they want regular people just living in the colonies with zero opinion.
Next, we go to the Intolerable Act. Wait, did you have anything more to say, Michael Jefferson? Or Thomas Jefferson, whoever you are?
No, sir. Just don't go Patriots.
Intolerable Acts. 4 acts. And, I mean, obviously they were 4 acts, because, you know what I mean. And they were a part of the Boston Port Bill, which closed the Boston Port, the Massachusetts Government Act, which replaced the elected town council with an appointed one, and also banned town meetings without approval. The Administration of Justice Act, which protested British officials by allowing them to go to a different colony or back to England if they ever put on trial, and the Quartering Act, as we stated above, which they were furious about, which allows the British soldiers to stay in a colonist home, and said colonists would have to cater to their every need. The Loyalists were happy to see that the Patriots were getting punished for what they did in the Boston Tea Party, but the Patriots were angry. Because they were angry. But the Patriots were really angry because they didn't want to respond for their actions. And finally, we have Lexington and Concord. Would you like to continue, Jefferson?
Absolutely. The battles of Lexington and Concord on April 19th, 1775, shockingly close to my mother's birthday, just 2 days away.
That is my mother's birthday. That is my mother's birthday.
Oh my.
I know, right? My mom is soon. That's
oh my.
But we have to keep on going. We know my mother's amazing and better than yours, but let's continue.
Let's not get into our mothers, shall we?
Continue.
The Battle of Lexington and Concord marked the famous Chapter around the world, which marked the beginning for American independence from Britain. Loyalists were angry to find out that the organized groups of, they called them scrubs, that is the American army beat the superior and trained British army. But the Patriot response, they were optimistic and happy to find out that they're untrained. I sometimes can't speak it. Army beat the world's best army.
Because you spent too much time in France.
In the war.
You spent too much time in France. Where were you? You have to be in America. Okay, well, that's when Hamilton and Jefferson, if we were friends. Sorry for this one was a little bit long, about 20 minutes. But we hope you learned a lot, and we'll see you later. Bye. Say bye.
Bye.